Well, hello everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for joining this webinar. I'm really excited to talk to everybody about a simple and effective method for creating behavior change. In this webinar, which will last about 30 minutes, I'll be running through some principles on using goals to create behavior change, and then we'll have some opportunity to ask questions towards the end. So let me start by saying the obvious here, that nailing behavior change, especially when it relates to health and wellness, is extremely important. We have about a 40% adult obesity rate here in the US. Diabetes risks and heart disease are climbing, while health costs are also climbing exponentially. I mean, there's a bright side to this scenario, which is that mobile health apps and wearables are gaining adoption. By some measures, an increase of 100% year on year with wearables. However, simply offering users the ability to track and receive points and badges isn't enough. Fitness trackers and wearables struggle with long-term engagement. About a third to half of people that buy fitness trackers abandon them after only 6 months. And today we're going to drill into one simple but effective method for creating more sustained behavior change: goal setting. So why goal setting? Well, there are three primary drivers that make goal setting an effective method for behavior change. One is it increases motivation by setting tangible vision that will inspire users to make a change. Secondly, it focuses us, it focuses users. It helps them prioritize all the vague health behaviors we think we should do, and gives us concrete steps towards improving our health. And thirdly, persistence. Having a concrete endpoint helps us to move past the momentary surges and gaps in motivation and actually stick with these behaviors. And I've listed a few examples of companies that do this pretty well: Runkeeper, Noom, Omada Health, and Fitbit. We'll walk through some more examples as we go. So this all sounds pretty simple so far, but why do goal programs change, especially in digital products? Or why do they fail to change behavior, rather? And there are 5 main reasons. Lack of clarity about who your target audience is, so having goals in a program that doesn't fit those needs. A one-size-fits-all goal and reward program related to that first point. Thirdly, an over-reliance on incentives rather than tapping into people's intrinsic motivation. A failure to create goal commitment or long-term change. And they don't effectively leverage social dynamics. In the rest of this webinar, I'm going to explain 6 principles that will help create more effective goal programs for your app. That will result in increased adoption, but more importantly, improve health outcomes. They include ensuring your program serves the distinct needs of your target users, understanding the benefits and costs of building around different types of motivation, using them in appropriate ways, setting goals that are engaging to users by being achievable but also inspiring, helping users focus by setting the right amount of goals, helping users to build commitment to goals within your app so that they'll be more likely to finish them. And number 6 is leveraging social dynamics in the right way to help users receive the support they need. So let's dig in. The first principle here is that creating effective goal programs is about realizing that not all users will react to the same type of goals. Beyond specific demographics and technology preferences, it's also important to understand the distinct needs, motivations, and aspirations of your users. So we definitely recommend doing a thorough job researching your users to find out what makes them tick. You can use market analysis, user surveys, looking at analytics if you have an existing product. But to us, really nothing beats sitting down and interviewing users face-to-face. We typically interview between 20 and 80 users over the course of a project, iteratively showing them concepts as we go so we can understand their motivation as it relates to the product that we're building. And so what this research has proven out over and over again is there are 2 broad categories that users fall in when it comes to behavior change. And that's the high-risk consumer and then the healthy striver. The high-risk consumer stands to gain the most from behavior change apps. There are individuals who are likely aware they need to make a change, but have just started to contemplate a change or build new habits. These are individuals that may be pre-hypertensive or hypertensive. They may have risk for diabetes or struggle with obesity. A common myth about these users, of course, is that they're older, it's set in their ways, they don't use technology. So we get a lot of pushback in terms of developing digital tools to them, and it is actually more complex. But increasingly what we're finding is that these individuals, especially over those between the ages of 50 and 70, have an eagerness to utilize technology to improve different aspects of their lives. And some things to think about when designing for these users or creating concepts for these users around goals is that they have typically they have a triggering event in their life that leads them to make a change and adopt an app or try an app out. They could have been considering changing their behavior and improving their health over time. So they may have a lot of kind of pent-up motivation, but typically that's set off by maybe a doctor's visit or something that happened to them physically in terms of realizing new symptoms. So these users, they may not have exercised regularly for a long time, if ever. So they may lack confidence at first. It's something that's important to keep in mind. Has implications for the products that we design for them. So with that in mind, simple goals are best. Simple goals supported by a lot of encouragement and coaching within the app and through cross-channel methods as well. Education to improve performance and their understanding of their health. A lot of times they're coming to these apps and these platforms with a lot of excitement, as I mentioned, but also they need education, a lot of opportunity to help them sort of uncover new ways to improve their health, understand the why behind the behavior change that we're asking them to make. And another thing to keep in mind with these users is that we need to be careful about how we facilitate comparison between them and other users. So for example, we need to be careful about using leaderboard and competition type concepts along with goal setting techniques because they're very sensitive to feeling discouraged if they're matched with users that are out of their league in terms of performance or activity. So the key here is to use those techniques in a way that really aligns them with other users that are at the same level and at their same level of expertise. So two examples I'd like to highlight here. One that's pictured here is Fitbit. Obviously, it's a big name in this industry, but they do a lot of great things, and they kind of exemplify a strategy of reaching out to people that are kind of these high-risk consumers and sort of novices around health, which is they focus on a predefined goal that's low intensity, such as increasing steps per day, right? It's something that's pretty easy to not just understand, but make progress towards. But it also seems meaningful. And that they also offer a lot of visual and haptic feedback along the way. So they're constantly reinforcing the user as they try to achieve that goal. Another example I'd like to highlight, which I highlighted a few slides earlier, is Noom Coach. You can check that out. That's a diet more focused around diet and nutrition. And what they do is offer a simple interface that presents a red, yellow, green approach to nutrition rather than showing precise graphs that chart caloric intake and macro nutrition intake. So those are two examples of how do we engage users that are more on this high-risk side for really simple, accessible goals without bogging them down too much in the details, but also supporting them along the way with encouragement. The next principle I'd like to talk, or the next user group I'd like to talk about is healthy strivers. And in contrast to higher risk consumers, these individuals already have achieved a level of health across a lot of dimensions of their health and their life. And as creators of digital products, we naturally gravitate towards these folks. They tend to be more digitally savvy. It's exciting to tap into their high level of intrinsic motivation. And they're better prepared to set their own goals because they have gained a lot of knowledge about their ability and limitations. And they know their own domain, so they're more likely to want to see more detail rather than glossing over things, and be provided with insight around their activities so they can tweak and tune and optimize their performance. A good example here is Strava, which is an app that is both for running and cycling, which actually lets you drill into your split time, allows you to compete with other people that ride or run on the same routes as you, and it really gives you a nice level of detail and insight around your performance. So you can see this model contrasting with Fitbit and Noon Coach, for example. The next principle I want to talk about here is harnessing motivation, inspiration, and incentives thoughtfully. This is a principle that successful apps do well. They tap into what really motivates people to take action. Many applications simply attempt to motivate people with discounts or points, shout-outs for achieving goals. So a lot of extrinsic motivations. And so we can actually talk about that a little bit just to draw the distinction, which is intrinsic motivations being doing activities for the good they embody in and of themselves for us, right? And extrinsic motivation being for their contingent rewards, and whether that's monetary or social. Extrinsic motivation, for example, can be helpful because it provides a surge or a boost of motivation in the short run, so giving people rewards. It's useful for getting people started, sort of jump-starting the process. Tapping into extrinsic motivators is extremely popular for wellness programs, and there's really, if you think about the strategies that are used a lot of it is around extrinsic motivation and continuously feeding these towards people. And we're seeing these especially being popular in the payer space, for example. But there's a danger here in relying exclusively on these extrinsic motivators, because they threaten users' inherent interest in the behavior that we're trying to promote. So over time, individuals need more and more incentive to keep them or maintain their interest in the behavior that we're trying to change. In some cases, it's shown actually that increasing incentives as we do this, we can keep increasing them and actually signals to users that the behavior isn't really that worthwhile in its own right, and it just kind of programs people subconsciously to see it as a method to get a reward rather than being useful in its own right. So the effect there is, as you can see in this chart, when intrinsic motivation stops, the reward stops, performance goes down. In some cases, it goes down below the initial performance before people are being incented. So it's kind of something we need to be careful of, and it's not necessarily sustainable, especially from a monetary perspective. So while many apps and programs focus on rewards, we believe there is room to use intrinsic motivation or emphasize the intrinsic value of fitness or health activity to shape more long-lasting behavior change. The key here is providing users a sense of progress, mastery, and emphasizing the meaning behind the activity. That's what we really want to go for. And there's some kind of interesting psychological studies that bear this out. So you can see this bionicle Lego figure here, and that's because there's a really interesting study by Dan Ariely. You can watch the TED Talk on this, actually, the psychologist at Duke. And what he did was he divided individuals in this study. He divided individuals into two groups that were given identical incentives to build a limited number of Lego bionicle figures, like the one here on the slide. And after they hit that number, the incentive went away. So he divided these two groups into the first group, who was individuals who built the figures and were able to line them up in front of their workstation so they could feel a sense of accomplishment as they went, in addition to the incentives, right? And then the second group were requested to hand the figures back to the administrator for the test, who would then actually just disassemble the figures and then hand back the pieces to the user or the participant of the study, who would then have to reassemble them and then hand them back to the administrator again, building a sense of futility and sort of removing that sense of progress that first participant had. And so what he found is that participants in that first group, the ones that had that sense of progress and were able to line up the action figures in front of them, they actually ended up building close to 40% more Lego figures after the incentives had stopped. So that shows us is that sense of progress and mastery are actually much more powerful indicators or levers of motivation. Another study by Adam Grant at the University of Pennsylvania shows that employees that consistently receive messages about the meaning of their work, or the value that was derived for society or for the end customer, were surprisingly actually more productive than employees who received messages about how their work would improve their likelihood of getting a promotion or a raise. So what does this mean for behavior change apps? Again, we need to encourage users to reflect on the impact that the wellness behavior or their goal has on them. For example, their mood and their stress level, how it will improve those things, or perhaps even anchoring it to a yearly physical result that they want to improve, right, for some of those less tangible things. And also, again, our apps need to emphasize progress and mastery by showing users how far they've come and celebrating their achievements at each step of the way. The next principle I'd like to talk about is that it's important to set goals that are appropriately challenging in order for users to feel engaged and achieve a meaningful health outcome. Goals that are too easy to achieve will not be meaningful or inspiring. This goes back to understanding which users we're targeting. For example, asking a user to walk 10,000 steps may be meaningless to a user who regularly runs 10Ks. However, goals that are too aggressive, like running a marathon or losing 20 pounds in a month, will be dismissed because users don't believe they can accomplish them. So the sweet spot here really is recommending goals that are challenging enough to be inspiring and identifiably attainable. Coach to 5K, it's a program and an app, really does a good job by setting a clear and inspiring goal for a novice user, which is running a 5K, which has big health impacts and social implications as well. And it focuses users on building habits around behaviors that are attainable for most people. For example, exercising for 30 minutes with increasing intensity 3 times a week, right? So they can walk, run, but at least if they're out there exercising for 30 minutes, they can build up week after week to something that approaches the level of running a 5K. Now that we've established the type of goals that are most likely to engage users, it's important to understand that the amount of goals users pursue or are asked to pursue also has an effect. We believe that limiting users to a limited subset of 1 or 2 goals increases the likelihood that they will complete them. Research actually shows this, that focusing users on 1 goal per wellness category is probably most effective. However, there are other models that show that a primary goal and a secondary goal can be effective as well, because if a user fails to achieve their primary goal during one day or week, they have a backup through which they can also build a sense of progress and be reinforced with encouragement. It gives people more options for success, essentially. More than a couple goals that we ask a user to try to accomplish, and it will actually divide their attention too much and end up lowering the stakes for any given goal. So something to keep in mind, as we like to give people options as designers of digital products, but it's important to kind of constrain some of those options to keep people focused. All right, sustaining effort towards challenging goals may become tough. Users can feel fatigued as motivation wanes. So that's why creating goal commitment is critical for users, really. I mean, this is a concept that we should always be thinking about when we create goal programs. The first thing we need to do is enable users to have a certain level of autonomy in selecting their goals. Autonomy, the sense of choice, actually, the sense of autonomy has been shown to actually improve persistence in pursuing a goal. Goals that others generate can easily be dismissed, for example. So when things get hard, a user may feel pressure, or if a user feels pressured into something, they don't fully understand why they're pursuing it. And it's much easier to rationalize giving up. So, in the user's mind, goals I choose hold me accountable over time to their success. I'm more sure that the goal I choose reflects my values and preferences and abilities, for example. Now, Runkeeper has a great example of this, where their goal coach actually interviews users about what's important to them, their abilities, and sort of what their priorities are, and then it suggests a goal. So that's based off of their input at each step of the way. The second thing we can do to build users' commitment towards goals is enable or build trust in the source behind the recommendation of the goal. Again, one of the first things users do when working towards a goal when it becomes difficult is to rationalize why that goal isn't important. Showing users the expertise and the data behind the recommendation of the goal is critical here, as well as showing how their personal needs and priorities influenced that goal suggestion or that choice and goal. So that's the critical part of building trust between either your platform or your company and users' persistence in achieving that goal. And a good example here is Headspace, who really shows that they're all about meditation and having a regular schedule of meditation. So what they do over and over again is emphasize the research behind this, and then actually meditation has all these amazing effects for your brain, and then they allow you to dig into the research a little bit more in their platform to see why that's true and really to kind of build that credibility. The final strategy I'd like to leave you all with when considering how to motivate users to stick with their goals is how to leverage social dynamics in sort of a very specific way to boost and sustain motivation. And this is coming out of a lot of research that has been done in the last 5 or 10 years. So one strategy for users is to build accountability and motivation by sharing their goal with a very small subset of people that care about them and that they trust with their health information, that they also care about how well they do. And then post regular progress with these individuals. So one research study, as I mentioned, showed that users who did this, who actually shared their goal and then posted regular progress, and this was done across all different types of goals, career and wellness and just other life goals. These users who used this technique were twice as likely to achieve their goal than users who kept their goals to themselves. So why is that? Again, it's because it created a sense of accountability and positive feedback for users. And Twine Health is a platform, a digital health platform that uses this technique. Twine Health is a chronic condition management platform that enables users to track their condition and set up wellness goals related to that condition, rather than just receiving the standard system notification like badges and progress indicators when they make progress towards their goal. Users receive encouragement from their loved ones who are often really the motivation behind trying to improve their health in the first place. So as I mentioned, broadcasting fitness activity is not for everybody. If you make the feature default, many people will kind of opt out of that program. The key here is really not to just broadcast stuff out to your social network or not just have a share on Facebook button, because people will become a little wary of that. Facebook and all these other social media platforms are very diverse, where people have very diverse networks within them. So it's important to almost build a care team or support group around a user if we want to leverage this technique. People that will actually care about their feedback and that they'll feel comfortable and trust. So that is sort of the final principle that I'd like everyone to consider when creating goal programs. Definitely there's a huge opportunity to create accountability and progress, but it's much more around a subset of people that are sort of very linked to the health of the individual. So in conclusion, many goal programs and many behavior change programs and apps, they're over-reliant on extrinsic motivation. And I think there's a huge opportunity here to explore different areas, and there's probably many more principles we could uncover and discuss around how do we leverage intrinsic motivation to create more long-lasting behavior change and commitment towards goals and adoption of a lot of this technology that has a real opportunity to make an impact on people's health. So that concludes my webinar. I don't know if there are any time for a couple of questions, perhaps. If not, we can accept them over email. So again, my name is Rob Gifford. I'm a manager of user experience. My email is below, rgifford, Gifford, at medullan.com. Or you can ping me on Twitter at rgifts.